Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the City of Kingston Tree Commission meeting. Today is July 8th, 2025. It's 5:04 p.m. My name is Suzanne Cahill. I'm the planning director for the City of Kingston. Just a few quick announcements. I'm just going to ask everybody to silence your cell phone, please, so that it doesn't interrupt the meeting. I will also just say the bathrooms are right outside of the room here. Women's is first, men's is past the stairs. If we have an emergency, please use the stairs and not the elevators. Just again, a note that we are live streaming and the meeting is being recorded, so please be aware of that. With that, I'm just going to kick off the meeting, ask everybody around the table to introduce themselves. And I'll start with you, Amanda.
Amanda O'Neill, Tree Commission member.
Evan King, Tree Commission member.
Good Sorger, Tree Commission. And Brett Neffer, Urban Forester, City Council.
Okay, so we'll just move into the first item on the, or the second item actually on the agenda. There are no reviews that we're doing tonight, but we do want to approve the minutes from the June 10th, 2025 meeting. I know that Brent had sent them out to everybody. Does anybody have any questions or comments or issues?
No.
Okay, hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve. Motion by Evan, second Amanda. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, approved. So Brent, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about the new street tree tags review.
That's right. So we have designed, thanks to funding from the Memorial Tree Fund, some tags that hang on to new street trees. As trees that get like freshly planted. I'm going to pull up the design both on the shared screen for the meeting recording, but then I've also printed out copies of them for everyone. And just bear with me 1 second while I so.
Yeah, you never sent them to us, right?
Not ahead of time.
Okay. We looked to see if there's an attachment.
Yeah, I decided to be brave and try to get a little jog in between work and today's commission meeting, but I'm paying for it right now.
Just wondering if you walk up the stairs.
Okay, so be loading onto the screen, but here are, you're upside down. So yeah, these are going to be little hang tags. Here's a physical earlier copy of like the final form where it's made out of a flexible plastic with a brass eyelet on it. So it really hold up to weather elements that way. Final design, I just have it printed out on printer paper right now where it shows just a little eye-catching hello. The IMA part is blank to be filled in with grease pencils. That way they're reusable for different trees. The idea is to have these tags hanging from street trees for the first couple of years because on the front you can also see that there's instructions for how to keep up with watering on them too. These tags are also a advertisement to community members walking by. Are you interested in a free street tree in front of your home as well? So that information then you can look over onto the back of the tag. There's a little bit more insight onto how free trees can happen, the QR code, and as well as the Kingston Urban Forestry link. Some of the information we've also got in Spanish as well, and then some just general purpose things at the bottom to help people remember that we have a 311 app that we can use, and then some references to support that's being provided in the case of these tags, by the Memorial Tree Fund, and then some of our other grant projects with the USDA and the NY Department of Environmental Correction. Or conservation.
Gonna say corrections.
Yeah, correcting the correction.
Now the city comes out for the first year after the planting or no?
The responsibility for the watering is property owners.
Stakes.
With that,
the stakes. The stakes on the street, the support stake.
oh, you asking what about those?
Yeah.
No, that's what, so if you put in an application to get a street tree, then the watering responsibility is yours right from the beginning.
That's right, but we will provide like a watering bag as well.
Like the ones of the street projects, the green ones?
Yes,
Right.
Okay, and, but people don't really know some of that, and then,
yeah.
aside from that, if the city plants a tree from a street project, do they look to water that?
They have been, the DPW will.
For how long?
Most of our street tree projects, the watering requirements are like for and for like our park installations also. The watering usually is the responsibility for the contractor for about a year after the planting happens. The success of getting the contractors to dedicate to the weekly waterings has been mixed overall. Certainly also between our DPW and then our parks plantings, both departments have watering trucks as well to top off when other things fall short. And then after that first year, that's when, you know, we want to be able to get better commitment from the public to be able to handle the watering.
It's like knowing two street projects, one on mine and one on Henry. Watering trucks never came through. We lost them on Franklin Street. For various reasons,
Right.
but some of it was definitely because of not getting enough water. But the Henry Streets, I've never seen anything getting watered, and a lot of them have no bags on them.
Now they don't have bags on them too. And it's also been a couple of years since the Henry Street project was done as well.
No, the trees were just planted last year.
Last year for Henry Street?
Yeah, they were late
They were late, there was
because of the
something,
sewer project.
yeah, that's what I was thinking,
Oh,
of something that put.
I'm confusing Henry Franklin.
Yeah, Franklin's a couple of years, and they still have their bags. Mine's still on mine in front of my house.
Yeah,
But the Henry Street doesn't have the bags. Some of them are looking a little shady.
Did they ever have, they had bags, so.
They did.
They did.
They did, but it's, a lot of them I don't see, so I don't know if they just. I know a lot of people are putting garbage in them, so maybe the homeowners or whomever could have come out so that.
Yeah.
Because when I went through Franklin, I pulled garbage out, a whole bunch of them. I shook all the garbage out when I was inspecting the trees.
Mhm.
What would make people think that they're for garbage?
I don't know.
They don't.
But perhaps like backtracking.
Mhm.
Because of this that's the only thing that like for the first 3 years it's making me think about it.
Sure.
I never approved a tree being planted at my house.
Mhm.
There was never a piece of literature put into my mailbox about the tree that just got
No,
planted. at
usually
front.
when there are infrastructure projects and they're complete road design and development,
Yeah,
it's generally part of that whole project where they look at the street trees, if any can be
and I ask
preserved.
those
and then, yeah.
questions, and I mean, I know the answer to it, but I'm just saying, like, I know it's on the tree commission, but there's 30 or 40 other trees on my road that other people don't have any knowledge of. So wouldn't it be smart to perhaps put something similar to this, say, hey, you got a street tree during this infrastructure project? And, you know, the city is taking care of the watering hypothetically for the last year. Please be mindful that, you know, if you're out watering, like, you know, or if you see it getting a little bit weak
Yeah.
or whatever,
Mhm.
ideally it would be watered for, you know, the next 2 years by somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, just because we've seen like.
Yeah,
like,
no, I
we
agree.
lost a handful of them on
I
Franklin.
agree. No, that was something that we had said originally back when, you know, these projects were going on. It's great that the contractor has the responsibility for the first year. Sometimes things happen, like on Franklin Street, there was an issue with the lawsuit, and the way it got settled was that the city assumed all that responsibility, and that contractor did not have the full year to be required to do his watering. He was, that contract was severed with a settlement. But yeah, I think that when the city is doing these projects, that they, you know, as part of that redesign project, that the property owners should all be notified. You know,
And
not
that
only
was brought
what's
up-
going to happen in front of their house in terms of infrastructure, but also that they, you know, that they're getting a tree and that they should take care of
What
it.
was that really nice guy that left before the Franklin Street project was done to work for the city?
Oh,
Greg. What was his name?
I'll think of it. I know exactly who you're
Okay,
talking
so
about.
before
went to
he
the-
left,
Yeah,
like regardless of his name, just you know what I'm talking about. We were going to go door to door where those, like where the little X was that the tree was going to go, and we were going to be like kind of that vocal thing we were talking about at the last meeting and say, hey, you know, this is what's going on, and like, you know, there's a tree commission and you're responsible,
Yeah.
you're gonna be responsible for the tree and give them some literature about taking care of it then.
Yeah.
And then it just didn't come to fruition because he left and there was nobody that stepped up to do it with me at the time.
right.
But there should be something like that. You know, it doesn't take a lot to just be a little bit more transparent.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, like, historically, regardless of what community, the commitment to water is the hardest part to get done when it comes to planting new trees. A ton of different strategies that, the most resource intensive one is to have a watering truck drive around and fill them. The lowest impact one is for property owners to be able to, as far as, you know, like not the like emissions of like a big diesel truck driving around all over the city with water and that sort of thing, versus, you know, the infrastructure is all there for every single property to have like a hose bib. So it's, you know, lower impact that way. But getting the community like able to do so, or finding, you know, for like on any given block, like a tree ambassador for the block who might be interested in taking on that commitment to water if there's, you know, like 10 trees planted on the block or something like that. Those seem to be like the most successful ways to do it. The one that has always been the most complicated with a lot of fallout is getting the contractor who planted them to come back and water.
Especially like the one from Franklin was all the way up by Rensselaer.
Exactly.
Right.
I don't know where the Henry Street one was, but
Well, it's their warranty. At the end of the year, you know, the city should be going through and saying, hey, this tree did not survive. You have to replace it. Then then they're responsible for doing that. You know, that's more of a headache for them too.
just figure all this work going
It
into it.
behooves them to do the follow through.
But maybe just telling people like you're either gonna water it or you're not. You know, but
Yeah.
maybe they don't know to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I
When
was
people are requesting the trees, it's not so difficult because the form on it basically says that they agree to maintain it.
I was more concerned
So
about, like,
it's
the
these
hundreds of
infrastructure
things.
projects that are the hardest ones, yeah, because people don't necessarily want them.
Yeah, the one small benefit that's come from the delay in the grant funds for these, you know, really big tree planting projects that you're talking about, Amanda, and then also, you know, potential future street projects, you know, when a street project has like grant funding in it, usually there's also a requirement to plant trees with that as well.
Which is great,
It's,
because you normally lose trees in it.
right, yeah, it's, you know, it's a community benefit to be able to add trees to these streetscapes if they're able to get their supplemental watering needs met. But like I was saying, when we're in this like lull right now between like any like other potential big street projects coming down the road and the DEC grant funds, I think now's the time to figure out, like, are there additional strategies that we could be leveraging to find, like, I mean, how do we get more buy-in for community to help with the watering needs that trees require in order for their establishments?
So I mean, even like at a council meeting, you know, with the different, what are they called? I can't even think.
Fire people,
The
wards.
wards, thank you. There has to be ways to maybe to advertise, you know, to be a street ambassador for any of the trees, like just at least the ones that are looking like they might be in a decline.
Yeah, exactly.
The same as like adopt the highway project from companies, maybe like something could be done with that, but that's something else to look into.
Yeah, I forget, it's a community outside of Boston. I'm always scanning what other communities are kind of similar to Kingston are doing, but there's one that I forget, it's just outside of Boston, but they have a like tree ambassador program where they if someone signs up for it, they get like kind of nice, like little perk, swag items, basically, like a T-shirt that has a cool graphic print on it. I think they get like a bumper sticker. But more importantly, they also are supplied with like 200 feet of garden hose. Because it's like, if you want to be able to fill these water bags, you might need to be able to get from your hose bin at your house, further down the block that way.
Do they get a discount on their water bill too?
Well,
Yeah,
I think that's the thing that always comes down to the end of it. It's like, what resources do we have to help community members be interested in these things that will only provide more and more benefits as they continue to grow. But in that very crucial first couple of years is where they really need assistance. Arguably, there is to kind of that idea of like, well, do they get a discount on their water bill? It is less expensive water-wise for a private property owner to fill a handful of water bags of trees than it would be to fill a tank on a truck and drive it around with two, fully employed staff members doing the water. So these are kind of like different balancing acts to think about with these needs. But
That's
Go
a
ahead.
question. Where did this idea, like, why we are doing it? And, like how many tags we plan to do, right? Because it costs money too as well. And I just want to find out what information.
Yeah.
Determine what is more efficient, right? Because I understand these would probably be eliminated, right? And that was, and I will tell you on
this is what the material will be like.
But eventually it's going to like will be on the street, right? So it's more material that we the time lost.
Right.
Because of where or what weather. But at the same time it's just like how long would the last?
Yeah.
Potentially last the full 3 years on that kind of like a vinyl.
Right, yeah. So to answer your questions, Evan, so this is UV rated ink, waterproof and everything like that. This is the same material that's used for like utility hang tags that are often put on like electrical boxes and water lines and stuff. It just has, fancier design on it, basically. The brass ring is specifically to deal with cracking that happens around it. The attachment point on the tree, I would not do string. The two options that I'm considering is either reusable plastic or reusable metal zip ties. String, will just end up twisting around, degrading and everything versus, materials, granted, they're not natural materials, but they will hold up better to the weather. They will hold up better to potential damage or vandalism, and they're reusable at the end of it. And a percentage of any of them will get beat up in one way or another. Having a secure attachment method prevents, the string from rotting and then, more plastic going into like the gutters or something like that.
Zip ties. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
They last a long time.
Yeah.
Like biodegradable ones at this point too.
I actually see the
Plastics,
property
bros,
owner though, if this is on their tree, taking it off and putting it inside their house. I mean, if you're a property owner that
And they
asks
could
for a
do that
tree,
too.
you're gonna take this off and put it in your house and just kind of have it as.
I think it's a great marketing strategy.
Yeah, there's definitely a potential for that too, which is kind of why I'm
Yeah.
interested in going the metal zip tie way. Because it's not as simple as just like putting like a little screwdriver in to get it back off the tree. So a lot of communities use these tree tags as a way of just kind of public advertising or broadcasting for it. New York City, theirs are like heavy duty, very little information, just like the name of the tree and a QR code, but then like a 1/4-inch steel braided cable that's been like clamped down is attached, so that way no one could do anything to it, basically.
And I like the name of the tree going on it too, because there's so often you're like, oh, that's a beautiful tree. I'd like to have one, but they don't know the name of it.
Yeah. My real hope for this is that to get a little bit more awareness of the watering is definitely why that's on the front, and to really, put the language of this is helping the tree survive. It's not just a nice thing to do. It's something the tree really desperately needs. But more importantly, that, you know, since we started doing the Free Street Tree program, you know, we can see how many, internally, we can see how many applications kind of get filed a year. And it's been a very, very slight increase in the last, you know, 2 years or so of annual number of applications we get. I'd like to see that number get a lot higher.
I think a lot of it has to do with going out with flyers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I see these as flyers that don't just get thrown away after they're handed to the person. You know, and for anyone who's walking by that maybe doesn't live in front of where the tree is, I'm hoping that this is something that's eye-catching enough that, you know, either they see it and it sticks in their brain for a couple of days, or they take the effort to turn around the back and see, oh, I can scan it on my phone or something. Yeah, you know, anything from you guys?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, and then you have one more question about, I think it was like funding for this or something.
No, not really.
Okay, all that's being paid for by the Memorial Tree Fund, yeah. Yeah. And with that, I think we can move on to the next part. So the Tree Board University, did everyone have the opportunity to read the 2 sections?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so just kind of review over the basic stuff. There's the orientation, kind of talked over, like, this is, you know, 8-course thing to help with some more information. Everyone get to watch the orientation video?
Yep.
Cool, yeah. I won't replay it right now. You know, from the orientation page, felt like everyone probably kind of was like, yeah, this makes sense. Not really a lot of like notes to take on this. The one thing that I really liked in all this orientation part was talking about the idea of the urban forest and what actually defines the urban forest. Because, you know, there's not really like a hard separation between like a rural landscapes forest versus an urban forest. The transition period between the two is, you know, very fluid in that way. But calling it the forest where we work, live, and play. But I think it really puts in the context of a reason for an urban forest is for the people who live in that urban space. Yeah, that being said, before I move on to the kind of first part of chapter 1, did any of the rest of the commission have anything to talk about from the orientation page?
No.
Very good. Okay. So they're glad we decided to enroll in the Tree Board University. And so are we. So the videos continued. What I like about this is that it works, you know, the content works for both like people who are more like learn by reading versus learn by visual kind of thing too. I kept it pretty light because, you know, next month we're also going to be taking a break. So when we pick back up on in August, I think that might be, or excuse me, September is when I think we might have some more opportunity to dig into the meat of things. And so this was the last section that I made a request for you all to read. As we get into this last section, the things I thought about talking about is like, how does the Kingston Tree Commission work? You know, we have the section of the city code that kind of lays out the responsibilities of the tree commission, which I think, you know, the commission does a really good job of following up with what's in that chapter 373-5 for the city code. And with that, the roles of the tree board, talking about policy formation, advising, administration, management, representation, advocacy. And they talked about how hard those like last parts are of, you know, the advocacy and the representation. It sounds like this is what you all are like, they're getting more and more interested in the last couple of months of like finding what resources there are for the tree commission to really like advocate for Kingston's trees.
I think that's the big part that's been missing,
Yeah,
aside from just like doing the votes and the discussions of, you know, some sort of either a complaint or an interest by a homeowner. Is that we really haven't been, like, other than putting some flyers in mailboxes or knocking on doors and trying to market it. It kind of like, how many streets have we done that to? It's kind of in the shadows of things.
right.
And people really don't know the rules of the tree commission. Or the city ordinances about planting or cutting down trees. And if we were to be like more involved in certain, you know, field days and activities, you know, even just going and talking for the infrastructure projects with some of the community, because the community was, at least the Franklin Street one, they were pretty vocally upset about it, the cutting down of trees and stuff like that. And going to it as a Franklin Street resident versus a tree commission member, you know, maybe having a little bit more knowledge and going there to, you know, tell them information, you know, now that you're here, obviously it's going to be a lot easier to have that scientific aspect of the information.
Sure.
But I feel like we should be able to have a conversation and feel confident with what we're going to say to appease our neighbors.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, that not like that proactive reaching out and like meeting with the community, which, you know, these street projects tend to be, you know, very localized to like a certain ward. And I do see some overlap there. Like, what does it look like for the, I don't know, does the tree, before we might know about like the next big street project that could involve planting of new trees, and then actually having a review process now of, you know, instead of just surprise the tree that was already there is being removed, to actually check in, it's like, can this tree be retained? And to actually talk about all these things with the community, maybe like through a board meeting or something organized. with-
And they had the Engage New York, that's what it was called.
Gage Kingston.
Engage Kingston thing, up and running, but a lot of the times we were finding out about stuff right at the same time that the community was finding out. And then, you know, the contractors or whomever would come and talk to us about it and show us the big map, which is great that we're involved and we had some, you know, gave them some feedback of our opinions. But by the time it got to this table,
Right.
it was pretty much just set in stone. There wasn't much that we were able to like twist and change because they had their mindset on the way that they were going to do it. And some things did, but, you know, and then of course there's going to be community pushback from anything. Okay, you're going to cut down this healthy tree. Oh, well, I don't care about ADA compliant sidewalks. We've heard that come in, which is shocking that somebody would say something like that. People have strollers and wheelchairs, like
Sure.
your neighbor, man. But I feel like that maybe just a little bit more information ahead of time.
That makes total sense.
Because I was really honestly worried when I walked into the Franklin Street meeting and a couple of people were like, oh, she's on the tree commission. I'm like, oh, Lord Jesus, please don't ask me questions because I, you know, like I'm smart enough to say, oh, like, let me take that back to the commission. And,
Right.
you know, if I don't know the answer, but I went as a resident and not as a tree commission
Mhm.
member. And I was like, oh, I didn't feel prepared and I
So-
didn't want to look,
Yeah,
yeah, I was nervous about it.
I try to be an incognito. So, yeah. But I think that's really important stuff to bring up, Amanda. It's like, yeah, even the internal process of what might, like the city code with street trees right now, says that any tree on public property, which would include the public right of way, is protected, from, cutting, removal, or otherwise being disturbed, is the term. And I think there's a lot of aspects of work that happens around these trees, that granted, you know, we do have some success with departments understanding that certain aspects of tree work need to come before the tree commission first. And we see that with like our parks department say like the Lauren Park pickleball project. But similarly, how do we get like, these, maybe bigger projects or like street focused projects also in that lens too our code actually does have this language in it that, disturbance would include the root system for the tree too. If we're going to, if a private property owner wants to do some repaving project of like the sidewalk in front of their place that would involve removing tree roots, they would need to do a permit and come in front of the tree commission. So it makes sense that that would follow for a street project as well.
And there was like for the Franklin Street, the first thing that I replaced on the commission was the liaison from the tree commission for the Franklin Street project. Was anybody on the Henry Street one? Seems like, so something got,
Yeah, cool. There
I
was,
don't remember anybody being on there.
I think.
And then I
you
put
were-
that-
You were on the Schwank Drive,
Schwank
right?
Drive, yeah.
Schwank Drive Clinton.
But nobody ever really involved me with anything, like I never got emails about it.
Let's say Kareem was.
For Henry? Okay.
Yeah.
I just never remember even hearing anything about that, so like naming one of us to be part of that. And then just doing nothing with us and not even sending us an email. What's the point? Just checking the box that
The
we're
project
there.
advisor, the PAC, the Project Advisory Committee, and they're chosen by generally the mayor, so. And we did advocate to get, when there's tree work involved or anything like that, to get a member of the commission on them.
So but then maybe involving the tree commission member on it would be the next step.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. Like if we have these rules already in place and we have this body here that can offer the insight both from like experience, of having done it before, and additional knowledge of starting to understand more and more about how street trees function. It's not a complication, as far as like what Sue was just talking about, with like a project advisory committee on something that will involve trees in the public property, to have a commission member.
Now, is that something that's part of your job now?
It is.
Are you more regularly involved in these things?
I am, yeah. And so my process now is whenever a department within the city is in need of doing work with stuff that might affect trees in the public property, I tell them about the tree commission process. The last time I've had to do this was actually the Lauren Park pickleball. And so the next one that comes up, I'll be doing that again too. Yeah,
Listen.
Okay.
yeah.
Just a two comments, right?
Yes.
Because I think for to encourage people planting the tree, right? I think there's one thing about we do have a tree map, and so I think we should be able to locate some tree, particularly require the tree planting. It is coverage. Right?
Absolutely.
And it's so I think that for individual homeowners to come to us, they all want a free tree, but potentially and reach out to the homeowner and say, we have a free tree program, and this particular area require, the tree planting.
Yeah.
And then give permission, and I can make it application. I think that's more like effective way to cover the like area. And the second part of it is that
Okay.
so I think, and the second part of it is like we focus a lot on removing tree, like most of the people will say, okay, I'm going to the tree commission, as an approval and also the permit, right? But in general, is how many homeowners understand, like, the regular permit is required for the tree survival, right? And so I think like that's something, and I just don't want to add like the third thing,
Right.
because we're talking about, then there might be some like, pruning because of requirement of the utility line.
Exactly.
Right? Then like that kind of is also a big factor of the tree survival, right? And
Yeah.
so I think like overall, we should really also educate the homeowners, like, there's a responsibility, of course. So it's not,
Yeah.
we all know, like, it's very expensive to maintain a tree,
Yeah.
especially a large tree.
Mhm.
And some people they might not have that capacity.
Yeah.
But if you're certain area of the Kingston, like, I'm grateful, like, I'm able to
Mhm.
afford it, but at the same time, that for some people, I feel terribly sorry for them, just, okay, they were forced to remove the tree. And at the same time, we have to say, okay, you have to. So there's like some sort of like income disparity, like we have to take into consideration,
Yeah.
and we help or support, the homeowners, to really sustain, like, okay, plant a tree, like you have to take care of it as well. And that requires, we,
Yeah, so you see a lot of these like ways that we could better improve like the equity with all aspects of street trees, both in like the planting and then also in the care and maintenance of them. So much of like tree I don't want to use the term maintenance, but like tree supportive work gets deferred or it never happens. And then it is unfortunately like a really negative feedback loop. It's like the example that I always use is when like the tree forms two separate stems that if you at the point with just a small set of pruners, clip one and then it takes over that other stem and continues growing straight. Whereas if you don't do that, 20 years later, they're two separate huge pieces that snap and the tree splits in two in the wind.
But I think homeowners in general, if they do prune, they probably do. They don't know how to,
Yeah.
and that causes some tree problems.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so it's sounds like y'all are really interested in how to get like more tree care information to
There was one thing that was done in the Rudolphs. They did, I forgot what street that was. East Chester Street, a couple of years ago, several years ago.
Westchester,
Westchester?
Westchester.
And I thought we saved that.
Mm-hmm.
We did, okay. But that was pretty good, actually.
do we have like does the city ever accept like the corporate sponsorship to recognize, just like okay, I'm going to sponsor to recognize the park, right? But it's a nice if well corporations and the focus on part like maintenance.
Mhm.
Then like they will, it's more like donation and it's also tax deductible.
right.
And then like the whole year they do okay, not like they get the sign, but at the same time it's like what the city will recognize like a corporate, health in this part.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea of like what is the potential for like a public-private partnership when it comes to like there's a lot of outstanding tree maintenance within just our street trees that could use resolving that our current city budget doesn't have resources for.
Like a dog award.
Yeah, like it has continued to be delayed with very small updates, but that really big chunk of money that we are supposed to be getting as a grant from the New York City DC. There's a sizable of that like total 740,000. There's a sizable portion that's also for tree maintenance, including pruning, and the information that we got from the 2018 inventory, what we were able to act on so far with other smaller grants in the past is those like priority one removals. In my experience, like there's also categories for like priority one removal, priority two, priority three, and then same for pruning, right? Like priority one pruning should be done immediately, and then two and three and that sort of thing. Now that we're like, 7 years down the road from that, those priority twos become priority ones. So in that way, the data still has value even from that 2018 inventory. But now it's like, does the priority one pruning has that turned into like a priority three removal because instead of the dead limb being pruned, it got ripped off in a storm or something, and now it has decay coming from an improper removal of that dead limb. So my goal, which a lot of this information I've already kind of gone through and started to create new like updates on priority stuff but I'm cautious to get too far into it with all the grant disruption stuff. But when this, we're still being told it's positive that we will be getting the New York State DEC grant for 740,000. So when that does come online, it's like, well, at the least we'll be able to start looking at the priority one prunings. And that sort of like catch up on maintenance is what I'm really, really looking forward to using these grant funds for. The new tree planting stuff is great. But I also want to maintain the trees that we currently have too.
Is that a DPW responsibility or you can have contracted that?
More than likely that will be contracted out. Yeah. When we do get to that point of having those funds available for that like pruning work and also like outstanding removal work too, I've started talking to some of the tree companies that do a lot of work in Kingston of the city putting out an RFP for day rates for tree work as opposed to tree work being billed like per tree. Day rate is way cheaper. The tree companies are happy when they can just schedule a full day's worth of work instead of, piecing together 3 separate things throughout the day. The companies are receptive to that. So once I can confirm that we have the funds to do it, the RFP will go out, and then we'll be able to get bids back in, which will also help bring down the price of doing this maintenance, which means we can do even more maintenance. Yeah. So fingers crossed that all keeps going in a positive direction.
I think that the biggest risk of having contract out was, I can give you an example, the one time I think that's a central house and then they contract out to tree.
They do, yeah.
And so they were about to cut a huge limb from the tree to Clinton Avenue in the St. James side.
Mhm.
And actually there's no power line. And so they already, there's like big vehicle and we have to run out of the street and why?
Exactly.
There's no power line. I said, we're just contracts to cut the tree,
Yeah.
cut the branch. And so actually it turned out to be the tree across the street, not
Right.
it's not the side, right? And so if they cut it, it might permanently damage the integrity of the tree. So I think there's a risk on that. It's like, they get money, they just, they grab the money and run, right? Say, okay, there's a project, as soon as I fix it. But if there's afterwards, all the fact that no one really, I feel, it's just always there's no responsibility or accountability.
Specifically for those companies that are subcontracted by Central Hudson. Yeah, there's not really a Central Hudson
I don't want to
agent.
name the big company, but just say the stuff contracts.
Yeah, but when it comes to utility pruning that they get subcontracted to a whatever tree company, it's like there very rarely is times where that work is being overseen, and those sort of mistakes of like, oh, you want the tree on the other side of the street to happen. I have some planned checks to prevent that. Like one, anything that I would be contracting for a private company to do the work, like I will be overseeing it, and then also confirming ahead of time that they're at the right tree. There's also a system that is used, usually there's a couple of different ways that it's done, but as far as like locating the specific tree, because things that you cannot guarantee is that whoever is like running the chainsaw can identify the tree species, and make sure it's the right one for that regard. But so it's like, how do you know that if there's two trees in front of the house at 123 A Street, that you want tree one and not tree two?
Tag.
You can tag it. That's the most straightforward way to do it.
You see around town, trees that are tagged with red plastic tagging.
Yeah. So flagging tape is a way to go out and manually mark
Yeah.
each tree ahead of time.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, the other way to do it without having to go and mark each tree separately is to, basically there's a numbering way to do it that's based off of flow of traffic. So it's like, if there are two trees following the flow of traffic, tree one is always the first tree, and then tree two is the second tree following that flow of traffic. And then you would say front of house, left, right of house, or back of house, you know, depending on what side it's on. And that house front is defined by the street name. So it's like if the house is on A Street, doesn't matter where that front door is, A Street is the front of that house. So your F1 tree is the front, is the side of the house that faces A Street, and that's the first one. And there's another like, you know, internal industry thing that gets used pretty frequently too. But belt and suspenders is always the way to think about these things. So confirming that, you know, we can give them all the directions and everything, but confirming with the crews that they're going to the right tree with the physical thing. It's good to have both on there, both, you know, either for like the management side of whatever tree company might get contracted and, you know, the field crews doing the work.
So I have like two questions. So going back to what Evan was saying about like the wrong side of the street and like, okay, that's human error. When you're doing it, it's going to be much more organized than just like a random company going out hired by another company.
Okay.
Okay. But, you know, what happens in going back to before what Evan even said about how people can't necessarily afford things? You know, they don't have the ability to prune, but that's mandated all of a sudden. You know, somebody pruned that tree and hacked it up, and it wasn't even supposed to be done. Central Office is like, I never wanted that tree.
Right.
It's not even by my lines. Then all of a sudden that tree got sick and now the homeowner has to cut it down or
Right. It's the homeowner's burden.
how is that homeowner responsible for something that they didn't ask to even be done?
Yeah.
So there should be some level of accountability. And what brings into the next question is the majority of these level one pruning trees that you have flagged around the city of Kingston.
Yeah.
Realistically, how many of them are from crappy botched pruning jobs from these companies that go out from Central Hudson? Are a lot of them ones that need to be fixed because they were not done correctly?
I'd say it's a mix. Like,
Because we see a lot here.
Yeah, of course.
Constantly, a lot of them are because of how badly botched up that
Right.
tree became from being around power lines.
yeah, you can usually pretty easily backtrack it just by looking at the Google Street View images from the previous years.
Yeah.
There's always some point in the past where the tree was fully sized. And granted, that tree was completely grown into the lines. So this is the complication of so many of Kingston streets having overhead utilities at very low heights on both sides of the street. But then the utility comes out to do the important work of clearing the lines, and then, you know, the next Google Street View image, so they removed, you know, 75% of the tree crown.
If you look in Rhinebeck, you go down Market Street, the trees have been pruned
Mhm.
to accommodate the lines, and it's not hacked like Kingston trees.
It doesn't have to be, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's,
I don't know why they,
That's what I'm saying, how much of this grant money could have been used to something else that's now going to,
yeah, you know, we are in a in-between moment, basically, of we have a very mature portion of our canopy and we have a very young portion of our canopy. We don't really have an in-between area. So a lot of those mature trees, they ought to have been pruned 20 or 30 years ago. When all this work could have been done in non-destructive ways that could have trained the tree in a healthy direction. And now this work is being done reactively where the ability to even do any kind of pruning that won't be detrimental to the tree is very small. At the same time, even just the new trees that we've done with Broadway, with Henry, with Franklin, and some of the other like smaller locations throughout the city too, those trees are all starting to get to the beginning of their ages where you can do that healthy training pruning on them, which is another aspect of, granted, that's a pretty inexpensive aspect of these like forthcoming grant funds of having those young trees get the establishment pruning so that way they avoid repeating the cycle that we're now seeing the end point of from 50 years ago, right?
And planting size appropriate trees is a huge part too.
Right tree, right place, absolutely. Yeah, and then in situations, sometimes utility lines also get installed on streets where young trees have been planted. So in reaction
The
to that,
difference in places where the electricity is underground is amazing. If you drive down Montgomery Street in Newburgh, which I did recently, because I had to go to an elementary school over there, I was like, oh man, look at these big, huge trees that are beautiful, and it's
exactly.
because the power lines are underground. That's it.
Yeah. These are the frustrations that I'm working with at the everyday level. So just a little time check. It's 5:55. Wanted to well, first, like, thank you all for like all of these like questions and input. I want to keep talking about these things too, moving forward, because I'm curious to see how the tree commission can be better involved with how do we find solutions to these systemic problems that we're seeing, right? And you've dedicated your time and your resources to being part of this commission, and I'd like to see more opportunities to engage with all that way. The last little parts of chapter 1 here, one of them that I wanted to touch on briefly was, what about the trees? And there's some links as far as like the Trees Are Good website and TLC for Trees, which kind of really helps with some like basic tree functionality information. And I wanted to ask the question for committee members, like, is there any, if there's a lot of questions you all have about like tree technical information stuff, maybe we like field those outside of meeting and I can just like write email responses or something. But if there's some short ones, I'm happy to also check in on those too. Or maybe there's some more like general purpose ones for like serving the commission for tree reviews as well. Does anything like that come to mind for you all?
Where does the QR code on this go?
That goes to the City of Kingston Urban Forestry page.
So maybe we could put, are those like those websites, maybe they could be listed like as
Absolutely.
resources
Yeah.
on that page. I would just put them there too.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Because if we're sending people there, then those are probably good for just the general population, I would presume.
And what about like the information, like you were saying, like the young tree to do that early pruning where maybe it forks off? So,
Right.
I mean, is there ability to put some of that kind of information on there too?
Yeah, the TLC for Trees website has some good information
So that does cover it.
on maintenance for young trees to help establish their form.
So I didn't go to the extra links. I just put.
No, that's not okay. That's Evan, anything come up around with you all?
No.
Cool.
Well, you might have, I mean, like, you go to the, of course, it says like the urban forestry.
Try scrolling down a little bit further.
Yes.
Yeah, the mobile version of the city website is under redevelopment right now. And as far as what we've heard from the departments that are involved with the company that's doing the city redesigns, that this year is when that new version of the city website should be launched. Because, yeah, the current City of Kingston website, exactly, yeah.
You have to scroll from a different spot. You have to touch the center, you guys touch the top and then scroll, and then you. It's very frustrating.
I think a lot of different age groups struggle with it, but, you know, there's just so many things that sit on the top of the webpage before you even get to, if you are able to scroll to where you get down to the part that's about urban forestry. So, the last resource that, you know, I mentioned when, linking this all to you, was the Vibrant Cities Lab website. So I'm going to click through to that. So Vibrant Cities Lab is provided by American Forests, which is the group that is managing the grant that funds my position. American Forests has like been in the urban tree advocacy world for many, many years. And this website that they developed has like a ton of very detailed resources, not just for like how do you do some sort of proper tree pruning thing, but more like thoughts kind of about all the things that you all have brought up about how do we better reach out to community members? How do we identify the areas where there's the most discrepancy in like urban tree equity? They provide case studies. There's the Urban Forestry Toolkit. I'm curious, did anyone get a chance to click around on this website?
I haven't.
That's okay. So the case studies I think are really, really cool. They give so much like data examples of, you know, not just like kind of the easy ones that we know, like trees make shade, trees cool things down, trees like handle stormwater, but really like nitty gritty stuff. You know, one of my favorite ones is that in that Vibrant Cities Lab has is actually a comparison between shade from a tree versus shade from like an awning or a building, where the tree shade is literally a cooler temperature than just the shade from a non-living structure, because those leaves are exhaling fine water vapor through their like respiration system, and that water that they're exhaling is coming from their roots, which is in the ground, which is usually at a temperature between 50 to 70 degrees. So it's effectively an evaporative cooler that makes our human bodies feel a lot cooler standing than underneath on. Yeah, I just think that's so cool. But there's also actionable things too, like the make it happen section. But yeah, anyway, there's some cool things. Every single one of these, they've got like information about what trees can do to benefit urban environments, and how to better design urban environments to facilitate trees growing. So how do you get that positive feedback loop happen as well? With that, I also want to be cognizant of the time that it's 6:02. So I think I'd like to check in with everyone. This was the last part of the Tree Board University aspect to go over. And with Teddy and Corrine missing today, don't want to get like too involved with it in their absence either, but I'll check in. Does anyone have like any like last questions or things that they wanted to share at this meeting?
I think my last comment might be, would it be possible for us to get the project schedules from like I mean, like I'm talking about street projects, right? You know, like
Yeah.
72. And I think potentially it will be more and help us to work more efficiently, or like, you know, effectively to say, okay, you know what project is coming. So what, you know, like what is going to impact the tree,
Right.
and then like, you know, then I think like we probably have to do more work on that, but at the same time, people know like we have ideas that okay, you know, this year or next year, right? Because they probably have this like project tables and stuff. This it will be help us to manage our time more efficient.
Yeah, so you like to see if there's a way that we can get a heads up on what sort of DPW street projects that might impact street trees. Yeah. Yeah, happy to check in on that too.
And any big things until September, you're gonna email?
That's right,
That
yeah,
way.
yeah, actually, that's a good one to close out on. So I know I had mentioned maybe 2 meetings ago, about, if there are like permits that come in, that maybe it makes sense to, approve the permit before the next tree commission meeting. And you all were comfortable with being notified by email, and I think my idea is in those situations, and maybe this will work for the next 2-month period since we're skipping next month's meeting, is if I send an email saying, hey, we've got a permit for pruning that, would benefit from a shorter timeline. I can't wait for like the next meeting that the tree commission is going to do. Can I have 3 tree commission members respond back saying that they are willing to approve this permit? So we're still reaching quorum that way.
Oh, we did that a little bit during COVID.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great.
I see it.
And you a second, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Hi.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.